Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight, I did have something prepared for you that I'm pretty proud of, but first, I want to release something that I promised on Halloween night instead. In case you ended up missing the live stream or would like to hear this story without constant buffering, here is the upload of the very first chapter of my very first novel, Buried Secrets, Chapter 1. I had a treehouse on the ground. The perception of a child is vastly different than that of an adult. A child's lack of formal understanding fails to grasp at the malicious and exploitative nature that the world may hold, and the world is frequently not all it seems to be. The fears we face as children tend to stem from all that is unknown, and thus fosters paranoia and fear that may seem otherwise unjustified to others. And yet, sometimes those trepidations are warranted. For even if the true nature of reality eludes you, the feeling that something is terribly wrong often does not. To truly uncover all that conspires against you, prepare to unearth buried secrets. Buried Secrets, Chapter 1. I Had a Treehouse on the Ground, by L.W.Suton. When I was a kid, I coveted my friends with treehouses. The thought of having my own little oasis, an abode away from home, was enthralling to me. There was only one problem with the concept, the fact that treehouses resided in trees. This was an issue to me because I was, and still am, dreadfully afraid of heights. Phobic, actually. I begged my parents for a treehouse that was low enough to the ground that I would feel comfortable using it. Unfortunately, the only trees in the immediate proximity to our house were either too tall or too sparse, meaning that if one was to be built, it would have to be relatively high up in the air, more so than any one of my friends' treehouses. Although the trees available would not accommodate a treehouse of such special order, I didn't really understand the logistics of it at the time, and simply wanted what I wanted without deviation. Now, I didn't whine or obsess over it, but Mom and Dad knew that my heart was set. When I was about 6 years old, I remember this terrible day I had in kindergarten. I had gotten picked on by a few of the older kids on the bus in the morning, and I had gotten in trouble with our teacher, Mrs. Stockholm, during the day. I believe I was talking while the teacher was, and if I remember correctly, had been told multiple times to please stop talking. I don't know why I didn't stop, or even what it was that I had to say at the time to my best friend, Jason. All I know is that I had an unabated urge to finish my thoughts. This ended up in a really embarrassing situation. See, in kindergarten, in my school, back then, when you got in trouble, you were forced to sit under a table that served as our teacher's desk. It wasn't closed off or anything, so the entire class could see you there, under the table, unable to participate in any of the activities until the designated time set forth was over. To a child, being singled out like that was an excellent deterrent because of the overwhelming fear of embarrassment. Sure, nowadays, this might be construed as some kind of cruel and unusual psychological punishment for some of you modern parents, but back then, things were a little more discretionary, and if it worked, it worked. Needless to say, I had a really crappy day, and just couldn't wait to get home. The awesome thing was that Jason lived next door, so he helped to lighten my mood slightly on the way home, which included the walk down the dead-end road towards both our houses. Jason's being one home more proximal to the road, I left him behind only a few hundred yards or so away from my house, and still, I remember that somber feeling setting in by the time I neared my own house. A few moments later, I had entered through the side door, on the right-hand side of the home, near the end of the driveway. The thing to know about where I grew up is that it's a woodsy area, the kind of country where hunting was abundant and learned at a very young age, and kids rode buses for nearly an hour to get to school each day. My parents' home was even deeper in the woods than most, built upon a dead-end road alongside 5 other homes separated by copious space between each. Forest basically surrounded each home on every side, even the side that faced the road, for across that dead-end road was more endless forest, too dense to see in its actual vastness. I had taken in and scanned nearly every trivial aspect of the environment that afternoon, just as I had done every day after school before. Every bit of it except the stretch of woods that lined the back of our home, passing it up entirely, as I had done most days, due to my using the side door after school. I don't know if my parents had noticed my off mood, or just were excited themselves to show me, but looking back, I'm almost positive my solemn expression hadn't gone unnoticed, especially since Mom had approached me, asking whether or not I had had a bad day. And when I nodded, she told me to go check the backyard for something that may help to cheer me up. This confused me a little, since my mother was adamant about me taking my school stuff up to my room immediately after school, before I did anything else. Astonishment and sheer thrill shot through my entire body when I saw it. My father and mother called it a treehouse on the ground. Now I know it was essentially a clubhouse, but man, at that age, it was just awesome to behold. Over the next few days, I had moved in many of my toys and plastic furniture that was cramping up my bedroom into play space anyway. I had gotten a can of paint out of Dad's work shed by myself, mostly because I had just learned to spell. I proudly scribed in large blue letters on the front of the timber brown hut, "No girls allowed, except Heather." I know that I probably would have gotten into big trouble for any of these actions at that age, including entering Dad's dangerous work shed, but I think my parents found the simple phrase too cute to, really, be able to effectively scold me. When my mom saw it, she laughed, and still brings up the topic today, briefly when she does, and at the time made sure to tell everyone what her youngest son had done. Heather was Jason's non-identical twin sister. We were all the same age, though she was in a different class than Jason and I had the biggest crush on her back then. Though I swore to everyone that I still thought all girls were gross, hoping to stave off suspicion and embarrassment, which ultimately failed. Everyone knew, even Jason, but we were young, and the 3 of us didn't really pursue the topic much. We were all just too busy being friends. Spring had passed, and summer was in full bloom. The month of June, after school had been let out, was spent mostly on making improvements to our little fortress. Jason had made mention at some point during the school year that if we could get on the roof, that we could likely see his house through the trees. "But I'm afraid of heights, man. That's the reason my mom and dad built it on the ground," I replied. "Yeah, but we'll still only be a few feet in the air, and besides, you'll have a big roof to stand on, not some flimsy branch." He had a point. I was afraid of heights, but the clubhouse wasn't very tall, and since it was built under the eaves of covering pines on one side, Dad had built it with a flat roof. The only problem was having a way to get up there. Give kids access and opportunity, and they will oblige you. I once again went inside Dad's shed and grabbed some nails. Jason found a few rocks that would be good to use, since none of us had the dexterity to wield a hammer effectively, and add in the easily obtainable scrap lumber from behind both our houses, a ladder would soon be constructed. This time, I did get into trouble for going into Dad's shed and taking the nails. Dad said that they cost money, and he didn't want me wasting them. I really didn't understand his logic. They weren't being wasted, I was using them. But he persisted, and I was stuck inside with no friends for 2 days. The ladder had been built, and I'd been up there comfortably already. We'd even put up railings, which were likely really unsafe if we decided to put our weight on them. But all in all, it was really cool. And Jason agreed when he saw that he could see his house from the roof of the play shack. I watched out that window for 2 days wishing I could have fun and plan adventures with my friends. but Mom and Dad stood firm. On the third day, my grounding had been lifted, but it was pouring rain outside. I couldn't go out and play. Mom wouldn't let me. But I was at least allowed to have my friends over. We played Masters of the Universe in the attic. I feel a little embarrassed saying it out loud, but while Jason and I took on the personas of He-Man and Skeletor, Heather took the role of Skeletor's dog. That might sound bad, but my mom would ask Heather why she played the dog in all of our games, and she would always reply with, "I like it." I kept eyeing the clubhouse in the distance out the attic window, and eventually, Jason must have caught me eyeing it, because he spoke up out of the blue and said, "You know, something lives in your clubhouse, and I think it's the Grunter." The Grunter was a creature in the woods that wanted to eat me and Heather, something that Jason had been telling us about all year. He said he knew it was there because he could hear it grunting in the woods when we played. One time, he convinced me that a pile of salt in his hand was sugar, and upon tasting it I spit it out, not expecting that burning taste. That's when he yelled for his mother, telling her that I was wasting salt. Jason was renowned for pranking me and getting me into trouble. He found it hilarious, and I could give you 100 other such examples. Hence, when he told us his story of the Grunter, I didn't take too much heed in it, or at least didn't show that I did. Of course, his descriptions of a drooling, gruff, dark creature that stalked my closet in the night scared the hell out of me, but there was no way I'd let him know that. Man, no way, you're lying," I said. Heather stopped barking. "Yeah, Jason, you're lying." "Seriously, last night when I woke up to pee, the lightning was flashing really bad. I was getting out of bed when I saw something between the flashes. When I looked outside, the lightning had stopped, but what I saw was still there. I saw the Grunter standing on top of your clubhouse, dude." He tried to convince me. "But you said the lightning had stopped. How'd you see him?" I asked, being pretty smart for my age. "Yeah," Heather backed me up. "Because I could see his one red eye staring at me," Jason said. I knew he had to be lying, because now he added the fact that it only had one eye. He'd never mentioned that before. He had to be joshing me. "Stop it, Jason," Heather exclaimed, scared of her brother's story. "Don't worry, stupid. He lives at his house," Jason told her, pointing at me. We argued about it a bit more, but Heather's persistent complaints about the topic eventually prompted my mother's presence. Listening to his story, my mother told us to stop, and Jason told her that it was I who was doing it, trying to get me in trouble again. It didn't work, but I slugged him in the arm anyway. Subsequently, due to my mother's words and tone, we changed the topic and forgot about it altogether. At least I did. But I didn't forget for long. It rained through the day and the night, and when I awoke the following morning, everything outside was so soaked with rainwater. All that could be described could easily be compared to a wet shoe. But the sun was shining, wet or not. I would be allowed to play outside. Being cooped up as a kid, even for a day on account of rain, is practically torture. Days may as well be a lifetime, so a rainy sky to a young child is nothing short of a substantial prison sentence. Thus, I hurried along through my breakfast before calling Jason's and Heather's house and heading outside. It didn't seem odd that no one answered. They weren't going on vacation or anything, and it was well enough into mid-morning that the Smiths were typically awake. I know it wasn't a Sunday because I distinctly remember thinking that they couldn't have been at church for that specific reason. But it was possible that they had to take a run to the store or something, so I decided that either way, there was no need to prolong my confinement any longer, and I eagerly approached my ground-level treehouse. As I neared the back side of the little wooden shack and spied the ladder, I first noticed something wrong through an audible context. There was noise coming from the woods from beyond the trees. It was coming from Jason's house, and it sounded like a group of murmured or muffled voices conversing with one another. This struck me as very strange, because if I was right, why had no one answered the phone? I decided to climb the ladder to the roof and gain a better visual perspective. The instant I placed my hand on the ladder, I felt an apprehension that I had only known and experienced the previous year, when I thought there was a monster living under my bed. My dad proved to me that there wasn't, and I eventually believed him, but this feeling was just like that one. Images formed from Jason's description. The cyclopean beast with its glowing red stare, known only to me as the Grunter, and it flooded my thoughts, halting me where I now stood. What if he's still up there? I considered. But I quickly reasoned with myself that monsters couldn't come out in the daytime. So, one hand in front of the other, I climbed the wooden ladder cobbled together with scrap. When I reached the top, my peering eyes level with the floor as I ascended, I saw something that I didn't understand now, and wouldn't until I was well into my adulthood and reconsidered these events. And since I didn't understand them, I finished my climb with haste, wanting to get closer. But when I stood to my feet, my eyes couldn't help but catch the sight of something visually captivating within the edges of my peripheral vision. I turned my head to look in the direction of the objects, over top and through the canopy of trees behind me. Clear as day, in Jason's driveway, were a convoy of black and white state trooper vehicles, cars and SUVs alike, and a plethora of flashing lights, and that's what grasped my attention so fervently. The group of officers talking with Jason's parents outside served as the source of the muffled voices that I had heard. I didn't say anything, and maybe I should have, but I didn't think it was relevant. The only thing that I thought when I looked down at the cigarette butts at my feet was, I don't know anyone who smokes.
Well, I certainly do hope you liked the first chapter of my first novel. If you're interested, you can click on the link for the book below. It'll bring you to the book's page, and you can actually get a 10-page preview, which will get you about half of the second chapter as well, for free. The book is available in hardcover, digital, and paperback, and is bound to be a horrifying good time. But if it's more horror that you crave, make sure to return again next Saturday for more gore galore. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.